Welcome to Nehalem Bay Fire Rescue Station 13. My name is Frank Knight. I'm the fire chief. I've been fire chief since 2023, and I've had the honor to be part of the district since its formation in 2009. And prior to that, a volunteer with the Nehalem Volunteer Fire Department. So it's a real pleasure to be here and hosting this event for the county to review our community wildfire protection plan and all the work that's been put into it through the committee, the contractors, and Dave Wells, the project manager, which I'll be introducing real soon here. Community Wildfire Protection Plan, or the CWPP, was made up of a committee of fire chiefs as well. 3 of the fire chiefs, of the 7 fire chiefs in Tillamook County, were a direct part of the plan. All of them, all 7 had input into it. 3 of us sat on the committee. So I had the honor to do that for North County up here in the Nehalem Bay Fire and Rescue District. A couple things I want to hit on before I introduce our MC for the day are some of the literature up here. So if there's only 3 things you take home today, first, and probably the most important for this meeting, the CWPP, how to get to it, to read it. It's a digital QR code. It's 250 pages. That's why we didn't print them out for everybody to have their own copy. Okay, so this is sitting right up there. A little personal note from Nehalem Bay Fire and Rescue. If you don't have one of these in your house, please grab one. These are medical information cards, so if we ever have to come to your house to visit you, when you call 911, we know everything about you when we get there. So they're great to have. I will plug Oregon State Fire Marshal on those because they are the creators of these. We just might have put a different logo on it. But Oregon State Fire Marshal, the third thing, this homeowner guide for defensible space. This is, I would say, probably the most important brochure up here for the action that comes out of this meeting, besides this county plan, is what you can do at your house for your own preparation. So those are the 3 things I'm going to recommend. So that takes me to introduce our Community Wildfire Protection Plan Tillamook County Project Manager, Dave Wells. Come on up, Dave.
Okay, thank you, Chief Knight.
Yeah, you betcha.
Yeah. So, hello, my name's Dave Wells. I'm the project manager for the Tillamook Community Wildfire Protection Plan. And I'd just like to introduce maybe some, Chief Knight. We'll have some other speakers who can introduce maybe later, or maybe right now. We've got not a speaker, but the Director of Emergency Management is Randy Thorpe right there. Maybe Randy?
A willing backer.
Willing backer, okay. Chief Todd Hesse from the Rockaway Beach Fire Department. He is the fire marshal, the Fire Defense Board chief. So it's pretty nice that he's here today. Dustin Ralph from this Oregon State Fire Marshal is here. He'll be talking in a little bit. And then we'll be finishing up with Tom Marsh with Bintel, who's actually been responsible for developing this plan that we'll be hearing a little bit about tonight. So sort of those are some of the important people here, but really you as residents, I just want to thank you for coming out here today. Just take some time out of your day to learn about this plan and maybe share it with your neighbors. It's nice that it's being recorded for the Tillamook County Pioneer, and it sounds like that reporting might be up on the weekend or so. So those of you who haven't seen it, you might be able to catch it that way. Another thank you to the Nehalem Bay Fire and Rescue for hosting us here today, which is really a nice setup, and we just really wanted to have it at a fire hall for this type of an event. And another thank you is for the Tillamook County Creamery Association. They actually donated the ice cream bars that we're not holding hostage, but we'd like to, everybody will walk out with at least 1 ice cream bar today. So I hope you like vanilla. They should be very good. And so I don't know if anybody who watches the TV, hears on the radio, perhaps print media, you hear about some of these really big fires in Colorado and Utah right now. Some historic fires there. But in the past, and sometimes you wonder, how does that relate to our living so close to the beach and this vegetation that we have around here? But really, when you look at, think about not that many years ago, Lahaina, it burnt to the beach. The Palisades fire burnt to Malibu Beach. And historically, in 1936, the Bandon fire consumed the central business section of the city of Bandon, forcing people onto the beach again for safety, is where they found sort of a safe zone to go. Not that long ago, and hopefully in many memories here, is in 2020, we had those east winds that came up, the hot and dry winds. There were sparks that started fires. Of course, the one in Echo Mountain Complex was the one just north in the North Lincoln County that burnt many homes in the Lincoln County area. Just east of Bay City was the Pike Road fire. And I think one of the things that is significant is what you didn't hear about. At the same time as those 2020 fires, the Pike Road fire, the Echo Mountain Complex, there was also a fire up Trask. There was one on Port of Tillamook Bay property, and another one on the east side of the Coast Range, which if that one had got going, that would have been sort of lighting potentially a big part of the Tillamook State Forest off, heading to another conflagration fire this way. So those are fires we didn't hear about. And I think one of the nice things about, following sort of my sitting down, we're going to hear from Chief Todd Hesse with the Fire Defense Board of how things are getting ready to protect fires, protect you from fires this year and keep them small, and these fires don't get to that historic level. Another big part of wildfires and thinking about that is the landowner component of it and what the landowners need to do. For myself, I live a little bit south of Tillamook, and I turned a field into a fire break before moving into the months of July, August, September. I wanted to make sure that that tall grass, which had grown up around the house and in the field, was knocked down to a manageable level so that fires wouldn't spread. And you could even move through it if you had to. And so we're going to hear about what you can do for your own structures from Dustin with the State Fire Marshal's office. He's brought along a model and a number of different pamphlets here. And as again, Chief Knight commented, if you take one thing home today, we actually want to take three things home, but one of those is the Defensible Space Homeowner Guide. So Dustin will come up here. And the big reason for being here, I think, is to hear about the Community Wildfire Protection Plan that has been prepared by a contractor that was hired by Tillamook County, that they received a grant to do that type of work with. But Tom Marsh with Bintel will take us through that plan of what some of the highlights are there. And this will be sort of the result of 11 months of work that has gone into this plan. It started about 11 months ago here. And the plan is now in the draft phase and is ready for a community review. And again, the highlights will be by Tom Marsh there. And I want to again thank you for your taking your time out today to be here and learn about this. And I also want to say that if you want to have some fun, I've heard there's Smokey Bear and a Sasquatch in the back room there for some photo opportunities.
So we have Smokey and Sasquatch here as our collaboration with OSFM and ODS, so that we can get the fire prevention message out to the state of Oregon in collaboration with the fire departments in Tillamook County.
Smokey obviously represents the fire prevention side of things. Our OSFM Bigfoot represents stuff that you can do around your own home, so we have 1 foot at a time, because we're talking about that 5-foot zone that's right by your house, so you can improve defensible space and reduce the amount of combustible things that are by your house.
And we do have that Tillamook ice cream as promised. So I want to make sure if you're interested in a bar like that at all, please take one home. So what I would like to do is, I'm going to step down and we'll just have Chief Hesse, followed by Dustin, followed by Tom Marsh come up and give their presentations on what they have here. So thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Well, I didn't know I'd have to give a speech, so bear with me. Anybody knows I can take about 5 words to talk for the next hour and a half. I'll start with this. This is this project that really an incredible experience for us as chiefs and as fire departments too. We're taking all the information from all these diverse spots in the county, combine it into one plan to protect everybody that's here. And with one end goal. I'm going to start with the end goal and then finish with it. But our goal, our true goal, is to not make the newspapers. So you saw the Palisades fire, you know Lahaina, you've seen these headlines. Where our job here in doing this is to prevent that from happening. And that's to give the fire department a plan, and to give you as citizens a plan also of how to prepare for that. So it takes both sides of the coin to make this work. And that prevention, that education piece, really critical. So I've only been here for 6 years. I happened to move here in 2020. And that was the year of both Pike Road and the Echo Mountain Fire in Lincoln City. And before I moved here, I was in a very dry climate. We burned big fires all the time. I moved here, I thought, wow, you live at the coast. It's always foggy, it's raining. What can happen here? And September of 2020 opened my eyes to a whole different experience, because all of a sudden the wind came out of the east, the humidities dropped, and a couple of small sparks became large fires. And that night I sat in Lincoln City, or just north of Lincoln City there, and watched houses burn and watched the fire grow. And to be honest, we almost, as fire departments, somewhat felt helpless in that situation, because there was nothing we could do. There was no preparation. We didn't have things you might hear about today about defensible space, home hardening, escape plan. Nobody was involved in any of that. So our job here is to start that process and let you know that each of the 7 fire districts, soon to be 6 tomorrow, I guess, at midnight tonight, we lose a fire department. It's Tillamook and Bay City combined, so there'll be 6, but each of the departments are committed to making sure that we're going to keep you prepared. So if today, at the end of the day, you didn't get the pamphlet you needed, or you have a question, or you need more information, all of us are willing to help you get that information or direct you the right way. We've got partners like the County Emergency Management, great partner. We've got State Fire Marshal's Office. We've got ODF. We've got all these tools we can give you to give you everything you're going to need. Let's see. So back to 2020 though. I got to add one more thing in this. In 2020, one of the things that opened my eyes is the other headlines that were going on in the state. That was the same weekend that Detroit, the Sandy Am fire happened. It burned up the Detroit, that valley up through Detroit. If you've been up that way. And there were multiple other large-scale fires in the state. What does that mean to us? It meant when we had a fire like at Echo Mountain and we needed help, we needed more apparatus, we needed more resources, guess what wasn't available? They were already committed everywhere else. So we might be the last place to burn, but we don't always get the help we need. So we had to kind of be on our own for that first 24-hour period. We didn't have any relief. And it was a real eye-opener. Again, go back to the education component where we need you to help us. So let's see. So, but this plan in particular, the collaboration amongst the chiefs, like Chief Knight said, there was 3 of us on the steering committee, but all the chiefs put their input in. Because if you ever driven through Tillamook County and you started up by the north end towards Cannon Beach and work all the way to Nesquin, you'll see a little diverse difference in our local climates. You think Rockaway, we're foggy in August, and you might be 90 degrees up the Foss Road. Or those are 2 completely different climates. So each of our specific areas, like the beach in Manzanita, or any of the beachfront, or up the Foss, or these different areas were all identified, and the concerns are put in the plan to help us prepare for that. That's, I think, an important component you should know. Let's see what else I got here. Yeah, everybody put in their input. We're all part of that plan. And I guess our goal is to meet those plans. But particularly in the education component, the 3 things I said: defensible space, is a word that we should all write down and make sure we know, is that gives us the chance to save your house. You want to see the foundation of your house? Please put cedar shakes on it. Let the dry grass grow right up to it. It really helps see your foundation someday. And we don't want that to happen, right? So if we teach you that there's a different siding to put on, and Dustin's going to show you this beautiful model over here. My gosh, she even has cedar shakes on one half and I can't remember what they call the other side. The good side, the siding that doesn't burn or catch marks so well. But you get those pieces that you can help with. The other thing is your evacuation plans, which I will say at the coast, I think we're all pretty good on that because we all practice our 72-hour evacuation packs in case of the ground moving, right? So this is no different than there's a flyer up there that will show you when to be prepared and when to leave and how those notifications are made. I'll guess Randy will probably touch on some of that. No, he says no. So actually, I'll let you know the sheriff's office is actually involved in the evacuation process. So if there becomes a fire up on the hill behind us and it threatens us, they'll let you know, hey, there's a fire on the hill threatening us. And then the second step is you might want to gather some things and get it near the car. And then the third level is it's time to go. So it's 1, 2, 3. You know, when it says 3, we're going to see the taillights and get out of town. So we'll talk about stuff like that today. Steve from Bintel, I got to call them out. They're the ones that actually wrote up our plan. And please take that flyer and read what's in the plan. There's some really good information in there. Really, I think that's about what I can tell you today. I think that's everything I have. Keep us out in the newspapers. Wildfires can happen at the coast. And we have a team approach to take care of it. So thanks for having us all here today. I'm sure there's going to be time at the end we can all kind of visit. So if you have specific questions, we'd be happy to answer them for you. But see you next, Dustin.
My name is Dustin Rimpf. I'm a community wildfire risk reduction specialist with the Oregon State Fire Marshal. So I serve Tillamook, Lincoln, Clatsop, and Columbia counties. As Chief Hesse said, a lot of folks in this room probably realize that there is fire danger, but some folks out there do not realize there is fire danger on the coast. You know the history, you look around and you look at the structures and what they're made of. I love cedar shake myself. I think it's a beautiful aesthetic. But I think we can all imagine why it might be a hazard, right, on your house. So we'll talk about that in a second. But I do want to really thank everybody for being here. I really want to thank Bintel and all the chiefs for being involved. I've been through a few of these CWPP processes, and I can tell you what, the chiefs in this county have been more involved than anywhere else that I've ever seen. So really think that you have good leadership, and I want to impress that upon you. So when we talk about defensible space, it's kind of like what it sounds like. We want to make sure that your space is defendable by these folks. So I don't do any of the hero stuff, but I consider my job to try to make communities so that the people doing the hero stuff are safe when they go to your property. And when these folks in Wild and Fire are looking at triage, right, when they go by your house, they're going to look at whether or not you have good access, turnaround in your driveway, and whether or not you've got good defensible space. Because in a wildfire, there's just not enough resources to save every structure that's going on, right? So that's just the reality. That's not to scare folks. It's just to say that's one big perk for why you want to get your defensible space. And so at the Oregon State Fire Marshal, we have really honed it down to the first 5 feet and up to 30 feet. And that's from a lot of science that's backed from the Forest Service and from a lot of research departments over the last 20, 30 years. And a lot of the time as people, and myself included, when we think about wildfires, we tend to look out at the forest, right? And we say, oh, that's where the fire is going to be, so I need to chop down all of my trees, or, I need to get rid of the vegetation out there. And that's a big component, vegetation management. But statistically, the most important thing is that you have the right materials on your house, and you have the first 5 feet around your house as clear of anything burnable as possible. So people, the first thing they think about is your trees, your shrubs. That's great, that's absolutely true. But what I think about is the stuff that is around my house that I forget about, right? And I call it the wallpaper of life. So, my dad always taught me to save every 2x4 and pallet and whatever. just to be a DIY guy, right? That's important. But I totally forget that that's the stuff that I've got leaning against my house. And so when there's a red flag day or a really, really dry, windy day, that's the time to start thinking about it. Going around your place and saying, man, I've got a lot of cardboard boxes in my carport. Or I've got a push broom on the back porch. There's a really great video of a California fire response where everything was good in their defensible space, but the one thing that caught was the push broom on their back porch, right? And that's because, well, there's a lot of different statistics these days, but well over half of structures that burn down in wildfires burn down because of embers. So the firebrands that are blowing, and those can blow up to 2-3 miles. You think of Eagle Creek crossing the gorge, you know, that's a good visual representation of how far these embers can travel. So even if you're not right in that wildland-urban interface, you'll probably hear wooey, which sounds a little wooey, but that's, even if you're outside of that, these embers can definitely affect your building. So think like an ember is what we always say. This cedar shake, you know, embers get trapped in there, and they, you know, at first they just smolder, but they smolder for so long that they cause that heat to really catch fire on things like your mulch around it. Again, I love some good free mulch. I've got a bunch of it. Please move it back from your structure. That's one really simple thing. It's a ton of little things that you can do today. So your gutters, moving, like I said, things that are combustible, burnable, whatever you want to call it, 5 feet away from your house. Thinking about, yeah, the furniture that you have. So like porch furniture, people don't think about it, but stuff that's got especially wicker, but even plastic will burn, right? So on those hot, dry, windy days, think about if you had to be in level 2, like Chief Hesse was talking about, you know that there's a fire nearby and you might have to evacuate. Figure out your plan ahead of time for taking all the stuff that's burnable from around your house and moving it out. That could just be throwing it inside, or it could just be throwing it farther away from your place. So when we do defensible space assessments, we always start with the roof and go down. I will say this is one of the most common misnomers. You don't need a metal roof to be fire safe. Metal's great, but a regular composite asphalt shingle roof is the same NFPA rating, so it's the same amount of burnability as a metal roof. So if you've got that, you're good. A few other things that we'll talk about, and you can come over here and demonstrate, but if you've got any place an ember can get into your house, so for me, once again, my attic, full of boxes. Boxes burn. And those embers are going to go in through those gable vents, the soffits, that kind of thing. And so what you want to do is you want to have an 1/8-inch screen specifically, as opposed to a 1/4-inch screen, which most of us do have, including myself on a couple of spots. I got to get that fixed. But if you have a golf tee, if it goes through, it's a 1/4-inch screen. If it doesn't go through, it's an 1/8 inch. And what they found through a lot of research is that that's the size of ember that if you can keep the embers down to this size getting in, it's a lot less likely to catch things on fire than embers that can get through this. Again, one of those little things, and please come ask me more questions. Some other things we got here, you know, if you heard about some of the LA fires and some of the factors that actually caused that spread, one of the things they found is that it was garbage day the next day, and the structures that had moved their garbage out from their house had a lot more survivability than the ones that didn't. So all these things like that, anything that can burn, you know, when I'm talking to teenagers especially, and I'm not sure the parents love this, but I always say, all right, I've got a big charcoal grill. It's at the end of it. I've got the embers down at the bottom. How would you take that charcoal grill, and then how could you burn down your house? Reverse engineer that, right? Think about any way that those charcoals, you could protect from doing that. That includes fences, that includes vegetation, that includes, like I said, wood mulch. So you want to have, yeah, either a metal or asphalt composite roof if you can. You want to have hardy siding. There's a lot of different kinds of siding out there, but composite cement siding, fiberboard, that kind of thing is good. And you want to hopefully have stone or cement or whatever right at the base of your building. Those are things. If you can't do that, that's all the more reason that you can do those little things to move the burnable stuff away from your house. I know we're not all going to be able to afford a new roof tomorrow. I certainly know that I can't. But I know that I can at least improve my chances in the case of a wildfire by doing a bunch of really simple stuff. So like everyone said, please pick this up. It's a really good guide. I'm not just saying that because it came from our Intel department. It actually has pretty much every step you want. And then in the back, there are QR codes to a lot of other really good resources. So if you want to scan those at the end of it, please do. Share it far and wide. And yeah, please come over to my dollhouse. This is made by my coworker Homer, so we affectionately call it the Homer House. And unlike that poster, we are not going to burn down the burnable side today. But if you get a chance to watch those videos online that have the two different kinds of houses where they blow embers at it, basically, you can really see the difference that defensible space can make. It's pretty incredible. So I will never say that there's any structures that are completely risk-free no matter what you do, unless it's a concrete bunker, but you can really, really reduce the amount of risk. And I will say Appendix B in your Community Wildfire Protection Plan has some other really, really good recommendations for defensible space and what we all can do. So it's a team effort. You got great leadership in this county, but please help them out by seeing what you can do on the next hot, dry, windy day, which probably will be coming sometime. I know it's what they call, you know, a low probability, high severity event here on the coast, right? It's probably not going to, the probability isn't as much as in Eastern Oregon, but the potential is still there for fire to cause some real lasting damage. So don't be scared. You don't have to, you know, freak out about it. There's plenty of practical things you can do. And if you lead with preparedness, I guarantee you're going to feel a lot better, because there are a lot of things that people think when they evacuate that are going to save their buildings. This is the #1 way. Power shuts off, sprinkler systems are overwhelmed. All that kind of thing is what people think about the easy fix first. This is a pretty relatively easy fix, and it's a lot more foolproof than doing those other things that you might think about first. So please come talk to me. I'm gonna get my business cards from the car, and I'm more than happy to come out to community events. This is kind of my jam. So anytime you want me to come out to the county, talk to homeowners associations, talk to your neighborhood, I'm more than willing to do that. Please get a hold of me.
I'm Tom Marsh. I'm CEO of Bintel. We have a small firm. We do nothing but CWPPs. We love this work, and we do them all over the country. A couple of them in Alaska. We haven't gone to the East Coast yet, but the culture shock might be too much for us. But we're in the Front Range of in Colorado, so we're in a high fire zone, not generally as regularly catastrophic as Eastern Oregon, but we've had a bunch of fires already this year. We got into this business, we started in Army intelligence, we did a lot of AI work, we were looking at satellite imagery and a whole bunch of things, and said, you know, this is the kind of thing that we felt that county management, whether it's emergency services, fire, etc., people with almost zero budgets and huge areas of the country to keep track of and make safer. And so we worked on that for a number of years till the technology got cost effective enough that we could deliver that kind of thing, along with the expertise. So we have our guys that have been writing these things since the early 2000s when HFRA came out. And that's how we got our start. And so that's our specialty. You can't be really too picky in this business. You have to just go after the things that come up because of the way the funding works, not because of the need. But we prefer counties like Tillamook, other ones in more rural western counties that are a little more stretched, have a little bit fewer PhDs and smart people, and have smaller budgets and need more help and appreciate it. And so we like these kind of projects. We've done about 16 published since 2024. And so that's our sort of recent history. Did one up in Pacific County in Washington, just up the road. Finished Washington County just before, and I met Dave as we were finishing that one up, actually. So we've been out here and around here. Conversely, we just also finished Laramie, Wyoming, which is, talk about a completely different environment. If you've been there, it's flat. The wind blows about 50 miles an hour on an average day, and it's all grass. And so completely different fire regime, but good people up there. I wanted to say all that because I want you to appreciate what Dustin said, really. But I'll even add on to that because we've now had experience with 3 different Oregon State Fire Marshal folks, and they're really good. This collateral you have up here is really good, really on point, and it's important to take advantage of it because there's nobody that's going to come save you more than yourself. Fire and this particular problem is not got a simple, easy government answer. It's mostly all of us rolling up our sleeves and doing our part and giving ourselves a chance. And by that, I don't mean not having a fire, not having even your house burned down, quite honestly, but staying alive. We're in the West. If these things get ripping, You've seen it on TV. It could happen here. And you need to be prepared. You need to be prepared with all the things that they've talked about already in terms of defensible space, in terms of the ready, set, go, the evacuation stuff. And and there's not enough people in this room to make much of a difference, quite frankly. You need to get your neighbors, you need to get involved, you need to get the politics sorted out. This is a big, huge problem that we've been allowing to fester for decades and decades and decades. There's no simple solutions to it. We like our way of life out here in the West, but it's not a way of life that we're going to be able to call somebody and say, come take care of it for me. We've got to take care of it ourselves. And we're pretty good at that. But I just want to just sort of emphasize that this is a money and a human nature problem at its core. We've been cheating the money problem for a really long time, and we're also human beings, which means after 6 months we kind of forget about things and we move on. So Palisades fire, a couple of years from now, nobody will know what we're talking about. But that's the nature of this problem. So sort of a political activism relative to getting involved in, if nothing else, it's going to cost money. Now you can either pay for it all yourself, or you can have the taxes go up. Take your choice. You can do it through the fire districts. You can do it through the county. You can do it through the state. But this is a big, expensive problem, and it's big and expensive because we didn't do the right things for a really long time. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox and just talk about the plan. So first, that's who I am. First, and they already mentioned this, Dave did, this QR code is also on here for the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. So you hit that, it'll take you to a survey, and you can leave your comments relative to the plan. I would love for you to read the whole plan. You would be a part of a very small group of people nationwide that have actually read an entire CWPP. But at least go, and I'll talk in a minute about the different components, go to the sections of the plan that you are knowledgeable about. So that your neighborhood, your communities, and those kind of things. So let me make sure we're clear on what a CWPP is. Community Wildfire Protection Plan. This document bridges the gap between you and your local fire department and the state and the federal agencies that are involved in these things. So what it is it's not a, they call it a plan, but technically it's not really a plan because it's not funded. And if it's not funded, you can't do it, or you can't hold anybody accountable for it. As a taxpayer, you say, well, you had it in the CWPP, but you didn't do anything. Well, that's because this is a set of recommendations. It's really the first step of a very complicated cross-jurisdictional kind of problem. You've got fire departments, you've got counties, cities, you as individuals, you've got the state and the federal. The state and the federal people haven't figured out how to work together and all this shit and they've been at it for decades and decades and decades. They're still recalculating things. You may have heard of the USWFS, is that what it is? I don't know. Anyway, acronym city. But this is bridging that gap. So what it is it's a get started plan where you bring in someone like us, or you can do it yourself if you want. But what you got to do is you got to get all of the people with a vested interest in your county in the problem to get together and share data and information and cooperate in terms of getting your arms around what's there, where the risks are, specifically with respect to what we call values at risk, and that's basically you protecting your life, the firefighters protecting their lives, and then property and cultural areas of significance and other things. But number one is resident safety. That's number one. So when you're doing the process, you have to figure out where are those people. So you don't have the money yet, but even if you got the money, it's not going to be that much. So you have to sort of prioritize and downscope what it is you can plan to do. So you want to be really smart. If you get a few bucks, you want to be really smart. So you have people like us come in that do this all the time, and try and develop those recommendations and prioritize them and give you a manageable bunch of things to go after and a document that you can use to go raise that money. This has already been mentioned. Really great collaboration in this county. The chiefs, I mean, Dustin said it, the chiefs, you have a really good bunch of chiefs. They're really engaged in this process. We got good feedback, and they need to be commended for it, and so thank them for that kind of work. They don't get paid. This is not their day job. They're doing this stuff, you know, in addition to all the things they have to do. A lot of people up there. Gives you a sense for how complicated one of these plans are if you're going to go implement all this, because Randy hired us, had Dave help. He doesn't have the authority to tell all those people what to do, right? So you got all these people with their own agendas and their own land holdings that have a little stake in the county, and you got to try and cobble them all together and get them to get some of this stuff done. But good community, and for Bintel, we appreciate working with you folks, and it's been a good project. So what is the wildfire plan tangibly? Okay, so there's plan documents, that's on the left, and there's a whole bunch of maps. GIS stands for geospatial information. So maps. Okay, so the nice thing about CWPPs is fire is essentially a spatially dominant kind of problem to deal with. I can tell you anything, but if I don't tell you where I am when I'm talking about it, it makes no sense. You need the context of the location. So we use maps heavily. We built a platform specifically for CWPPs, and so we're continually adding sort of functionality to this so that your folks have the tools they need to solve these problems. The plan documents, I think somebody mentioned, it's about 250 pages total. The way they're organized is there's a main plan that's about 80 pages that'll give you the gist of everything. Then there's an Appendix A that has a write-up for each, what we call WUI community. So we've gone through and looked at where the concentrations of people are that are exposed to the wildland interface. And we've identified those, and you'll find a map that's got a polygon around it, a border around it, and then we look at that in terms of how can we make that area safer. Okay, A gives you a write-up for each one of those communities. So there's going to come along with that in a hazard rating, which helps the folks that are trying to get money or spend money to make you safer. It helps them prioritize where they spend that money. So the government requires this kind of thing for any kind of budgeting and spending stuff, but in this case, what they're trying to correct, which was a problem 20 years ago when the legislation was passed, is people getting money from the government because they've got a giant ranch and they got a good buddy at the state house or in the federal government, and they want to get the government to spend money to protect their ranch or protect their assets, and so it gets away from the public good. So there's a prioritization around hazard rating that goes in there, and that's what's in those A. So if you're going to read this, go to the map, figure out where your community is or the closest one, and then read that section in Appendix A or the sections that might be nearby you, and or then go to the map, because if you click on an image in the digital version of the plan, if you click on any map image, it'll take you to the map platform, and you can do the usual Google Map thing. You can zoom in and scroll around and poke at it and see whether your neighbor took his garbage out or not, because there's a satellite imagery underneath it. But anyway, B is the one Dustin mentioned. That's got a version of all the home ignition zone stuff, defensible space and structure hardening. That's in there. He's got a much cooler 4-color brochures, and one of these, I'm so jealous. I saw Jen when she had that the first time. I'm just waiting for him to set it on fire. But anyway, but they've got good stuff. B, if you want a document to take home with you, B has got a whole bunch of these kinds of recommendations in it. C is methodology. There's some fire science as a part of these plans that help do the hazard ratings and whatnot. And so C is where we talk about our methodology. That's for fire geeks. And just as an aside, I would highly encourage you to make yourself an expert in fire. It's a great investment. If you're going to live in the West, in the woods, you can't get away from this problem because fire got here before you did. Fire's been in this environment for thousands of years, and it's shaped the environment. That's why it looks and is the way it is. We're just trying to mess with, not trying, we've been messing with that environment and that formula, but you're living in it. Understand fire. There's a couple of elements, you can simplify it. So when those fire warning things go, extreme danger, red, whatever the warning zones are, you know what those are. And you know what to look for, humidity levels, wind direction, all those kinds of things, so you can be prepared. It's not that hard to understand in the basics. D is, if you're a person that likes to go to the end of a report and work backwards, D is where the mitigation recommendations are for the county. So this is not the mitigation recommendations for your house. That's the HIZ stuff, which applies to everybody, no matter where they live. This is the recommendations for, in the different fire districts, in the county for defense, not defensible space, but thinning, roadside treatments, and other things that I'll talk about a little bit more. So that's really what the package is all about. You can find that on the website at CWPP.us. There's QR codes that are around. I've got some cards sitting around that have on my name. There's a QR code next to it. It'll take you to the site as well. We'll bring that map up at the end. So how do you build a CWPP? Why did it take 11 months? First thing is, at least in our processes, we have a lot of technology, and there's a lot of cool stuff, and if you follow this field, you'll see people talking about AI-generated cameras and fancy satellites and all kinds of things. The same firefighters are putting wildfires out the same way a day that they have been for decades. You can point satellites at this stuff, but it ain't going to fix it. Ultimately, it's what they call boots on the ground. It's guys that have been doing this for a living. We have our guy that we keep really busy, and some others of us that are sort of wannabe fire guys. But what we do is we do a tour of the ALI area of interest, which is Tillamook County. Typically, we're riding shotgun with one of the fire chiefs. We're going around the county, and all those little icons up there take a picture. So there is a map on the platform called Fieldwork, and all those little icons are pictures. And we do that because we want to actually look at the terrain that we're seeing from the maps and the satellites and all that stuff. We want to look at it physically and understand, whether it matches what the technology is telling us. There's really no substitution. It's also the coolest thing we get to do. So we do that, then we identify, and there's a bunch of work that goes behind this. It takes a couple of months before we're done with it. Usually in this case, it was 38 what we call WUI communities, or intermixed communities. And this is, remember, we're protecting values at risk. So you've got to figure out where those people are, where are those values, and then you build the risk of anything around it. So that's what all these are. The colors on that map. I know it's hard to read all these things on the screen. That's why you go to the platform and build the plan. The colors are the hazard rating. So the red, obviously, most hazardous or extreme. Blue is not so much. We also spend some time on the history. And you don't have a bunch of giant fires in the last few days. Now, you talked about the Labor Day events and whatnot, so it's not been that far away. But like up in Pacific County, even in Washington County, we got that come on, what are we doing this for? We don't really have fires here. What's the big deal? I'm going to just, build a house out of feeder-shaped shingles and stack pine needles all over the place, and it's never going to bother anybody. No, it does. Tillamook burn. Anybody here heard of that? Okay. It can happen. Not going to happen every year, But if you get the right conditions, you can have one of those big ones. And if you have one of those big ones, get on your yacht and go out in the ocean, because the fire departments are not going to be able to. They're going to help you get out safely, but those kind of fires, the Palisades fires, the Lahaina fires, the big fires, we had one called Marshall Fire right down the street from where I live. Those things hit the subdivisions, and the subdivisions, the houses turn into trees, and the wind's blowing 90 miles an hour, and basically it's just save yourself. So you got some elevation, slope, aspect, fuel model, etc. So every 30 by 30 meter pixel in the country, looking down from space, has a whole bunch of attributes associated with it. So that's kind of the basic platform that you build the models off of. So when the model says it's going to burn right here, it knows that, you know, that that's grass or that's pine or whatever. And so that's how that works. This is the land fire vegetation map imposed on Tillamook County. The color schemes in these are generally intuitive. You know, if it's like dark red or dark brown or whatever, it's more dangerous. If it's green and blue, it's not. You can see here, you know, in your particular county, you're in good shape. You're coming across from Washington County, you know, through the mountains. You're probably familiar with all the terrain. Where you get some danger is along the coast where there's concentrations of people, a little more open space, things can dry out, the vegetation can be a little bit more flammable. This quad changes on every project. I was telling Dave, we just did Laramie County in Wyoming, and it's all grassland, and so their problem wasn't crown fire, and it wasn't flame length, it wasn't fire line intensity, it was speed. That rate of spread there, you know, you just, you know, call your kids and hang up the phone and the fire's gone 3 miles. And it's moved so fast there that your whole objective is to keep it out of the homes, keep it away from things that can create some damage. Otherwise, you know, you just let it go and next year it'll be all green again anyway. But it's a very different environment. Here, it's very discontinuous, I'll put it that way. You can see in terms of flame length, even crown fire, you've got a little red up in the mountains and in certain pockets. But it's really broken up. This integrated hazard view is a consolidated view that the FDS platform kicks out for planning purposes. Simply put, if this means anything to you, what they do is they say, if I drop a match inside of any 30 by 30 meter pixel, is it going to spread to the next pixel? And then it uses that to build a model for planning purposes. It's not a fire simulation model, that's a different program, but it's used for planning. And you can see we've put the WUI communities on here so you can see where they are relative to the integrated hazard visualization. This is a table that just tells you what all the WUI communities' ratings are. You can see this by going to the plan and looking at the table here, or you can simply go to the map that has the community boundaries on it, and that map will have each one of the polygons for that community color-coded. So you can see it there, and you can open up the table with the information. Again, two things about these ratings. One is these are not absolute ratings. So if you're familiar and you look up wildfire risk models, and there's a lot of them around, the states have them, there's some federal ones and so on. This is not a hazard rating that you can compare with another state or not even another county necessarily, unless it's exactly like Tillamook. The purpose of this is to give the planning folks here at Tillamook County relative hazard ratings between the different communities. So an extreme here is probably almost low relative to Eastern Oregon, if that makes sense. So the idea is if you just gave it an absolute rating, they would all be blue here, and you would all go like, okay, fine, we don't need to worry about anything, we're going home. But that's the purpose of these ratings. Okay, This is, there's only one thing up here I really want to emphasize. This is a planning document with recommendations. This is not a commitment, and these recommendations do not carry the force of law in any way, shape, or form. So if you see something in this plan and you go like, no way you're cutting down my trees that are in this green square over here on the edge of my property, that's not going to happen until somebody decides to actually prioritize that mitigation project, at which point they have to come, if you're the landowner, and talk to you about it, and everybody whose property is involved has to sign up. And so there's a lot of elements that go into that. Dustin's organization probably gets into some of that with respect to designing mitigation projects, forest health. There's a whole bunch of factors that are involved there. If it's a parcel that doesn't have a road right into it, you're going to have to drive bulldozers across somebody else's property. You can't do that unless you get their permission, right? So there's a whole bunch of things involved. If there are any, in some areas we have tribal, cultural areas, not always tribal, but where there might be areas that aren't marked for kind of obvious reasons, that you don't want somebody bulldozing the property or doing mitigation on it without the appropriate approvals and cost checks, okay? So this document is set up and to give the county the tools to go prioritize the work that they want to do, cost it out, go raise the money to do it if they don't have it already, and then the specifics of executing the plan take place. So that's really a next step after this. 40 is a pretty good number. These plans have a life of 5 years before they're considered obsolete in terms of the federal and state rules relative to using them for raising money. And if you think about it, life changes, landscape changes. If you have fire there, if you develop new subdivisions, if you do other things, it's best to keep them current once a year, but 5 years is the deadline. So getting to 77 projects done in 5 years, you guys would get the gold star because, I'll give you an example. I was talking earlier about a plan in Colorado. They got done, a big firm wrote a plan, had 173 recommendations in it. A year later, they came to us and asked if we could do a actual mitigation plan for the projects on property that the county owned, which was 40, and could we boil it down to 10 and then scope that and see if they could afford to do 5 or 6 in a year, right? So let's see, if you do 6 a year, how long does it take you to do 170, right? Okay, so somebody's just writing plans for fun at that point. But anyway, that's not what you're going to get done in 5 years. If you can, great, but the key thing there is the next steps, which involve prioritizing these projects, really going through the hard work of figuring out which ones we can do, how much can we spend, what sort of criteria are we going to use for the prioritization. You're going to use money, you're going to use vulnerable populations, what sort of people can't afford to lose their houses as much as others. Tough judgment call there in some respects. And so there's a lot of criteria that go into figuring out how to prioritize those and then go out and price them. Go in there and we'll bring it up. We'll bring up that one image, Frank, that we were looking at earlier. I'll show that to you in a second. If you're wondering Dustin was talking about home hardening and how that works. And did a great job of it. So now if you're thinking in terms of communities, in some communities the forest goes right in through the community, so there's fire pathways you got to deal with. You can't build a wall around every community. Not that would work probably anyway, but there's folks that say, well, just drilling. I think Dave, did you mention you were plowing a fire break on your own property, right? So there's well-researched statistical and technical ways of designing and building fire breaks to be most effective. It's highly custom because of the world is custom. But does it work? Here's Wyoming. That's an actual fire scar there, the Happy Jack fire. That's about 20 miles from the start, way down in the lower left corner. You can see how wind makes a fire run in Wyoming. You started here and it's only that big right there, but it's like, 40 miles long in a couple of hours. And what we're showing here is, stop it there, you can see how the roads affected the fire in terms of giving the fire departments a good place to defend and put brakes in. And then here, I didn't realize this until we did the presentations. We talk about this is called linked defensible space. This is where we take and recommend that all these neighbors get together and do the defensible space that Dustin was talking about so that it overlaps. The orange circles are 100 foot diameter circles, right? If you can get those to overlap, you can stop the fire there. And then what you're doing is you're just dealing with spotting that occurs if there's a lot of wind. The spotting will come over here, and you've got another bunch of guys in here that are putting out spot fires. Even you can do that in some cases, but this is the key place right here. If that fire runs on the grass through there, it gets off into here, now you're defending it in all those directions. So this works. I mean, you can see there are more trees than they have grass, but anyway, does that help kind of explain at least a part of this? So when we talk about landscape scale mitigation recommendations, this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. We're protecting multiple community areas. Okay, when you look, if you do this for a little while, you can't drive through the landscape without your brain mentally calculating all this stuff and going like, okay, that house is toast. This guy's doing a pretty good job, right? So what you're trying to do is think of this big fire coming this way. So if you can get it out of the crowns and down to the grass and keep it down there, and then you've got your defensible space right here, 0 to 5 and out to 30, this stuff here is not going to set your house on fire. God, I just want to say this community has been great to work with. You have a big advantage in the sense that your danger level and the probability that you're going to have that big fire this summer is not anywhere near as high as most of the country. That's not to be complacent though, because it will come. There's none of these modeling programs, none of the people like us, you can't predict these things. We know statistically they're going to happen because they have happened for thousands of years, but we can't tell you that this fire is going to start on this street corner under these wind conditions, under this humidity levels, at this temperatures, at this time. You can skate through those kind of things. Just hold your breath and, say your prayers and be thankful. But you've got time because of that. The climate's getting warmer for whatever reason. It is getting warmer and these fires are getting worse, and you need to be prepared if you want to live here. If you don't want to be prepared, do yourself a favor and move to the city. I'm not saying that facetiously. That's seriously, we don't belong out in the middle of the woods in the first place. So if you're not prepared to do the work and spend the money and take care of your neighborhood and your property and your firefighters, then give them a break. And don't sell it to some other person from Bronx or Brooklyn or someplace. Won't know what the hell they're getting into until they burn out. So that's it.